At least among us, we were fine with it. Okay, cool, great. Um, okay, welcome everybody. Uh, Somebody left. We were waiting for people to join and somebody left. Okay, I'm going to find out who that is. Anyway, uh, so we are basically Unicode research in a sense, like that is this group that we formed, and over the past, I guess, a year and a half, we've been doing different things under that could just come under this umbrella of research. There's a lot of things that happen in research, obviously, but today we're not going to talk about all of those things. We're just going to talk about the conventional sort of research that you can involve yourself in, that you can end up doing in your 4 years of undergrad. So I mean, ठीक है, intro इतना कुछ देने को है नहीं. Let's just start with this idea of why, right? Why should you be doing research in the first place? So, just slide. Okay, yeah. So before we get into any of that as well, this is, I think, the most important slide of all. Guys, this obviously just comes from our experience. This has, I mean, there's no like factual accuracy कि ऐसा करोगे तो ऐसा definitely होगा. There's no way you can sort of outline those things. We've just experienced these things. We've tried to do different things in different ways. I think just amongst the 4 or 5 of us, there's a vast there's a vast divergence even in our own experiences. So I'm sure that if every single one of your 25 people takes just one thing and you apply that, that's going to be 25 different ways of thinking about this entire approach, right? So take it as just our experience, as guidelines, I would say, and yeah, proceed from there. Think what is good for you, and then try to tailor what you like, tailor your experience. I mean, you get my point, right? So okay, next. Okay, so this is what we'll be covering today. We'll start with essentially why you want to be doing research internships. We'll talk about research programs, both national and international, uh, and then so this will involve somewhat of how to get into these programs, both of these, international and national. Some of these are obviously just application based, but some of these aren't. So that is where cold emailing and stuff like that comes in. Then you have research startups, open communities. Where do you publish your research? Then there's more resources, and then the case study, the finale, more or less, I guess, which is Swapnil himself. So that is what we'll be doing for, I guess, the next hour or so. Yeah. So let's just start with why do you want to be doing research, right? So, ja, next slide. Huh. So the idea is pretty simple. Undergrad mein you aren't going to be exploring a lot of cutting edge stuff, a lot of stuff that a lot of, I mean, in the States, I suppose, even in their undergrad, a lot of students end up working on stuff that is being used in the industry, that is literally just cutting edge, the latest stuff to come out of entire fields, right? So that is not the kind of experience we have in our colleges, because that's just not the kind of place we're in. So the biggest advantage of research is obviously the opportunity to work under some professor, some researcher who is already who already has this wealth of experience, and then you're getting like you're getting access to that, right? So that is the biggest thing, of course. Once you get into an internship, uh, a lot of the work actually involves just doing things from scratch. Usually professors will ask you to implement stuff that they think about. So this is how I think we might cover this in one of the slides down the line, but I'll just mention it anyway. A lot of research internships at our level actually are just where PhD students and researchers, they think about all of these really cool ideas and they expect you to implement them in some way, right? So to do that, you need to obviously understand what it is, and then you need to have the programming acumen to uh, make these things, right? So it's just as important. It doesn't mean that you won't be thinking about those things at all, but just to like just to make that point clear. So that is where doing things from scratch and obviously determination comes in, because this isn't the kind of stuff where you can just, okay, Stack Overflow pe dekh liya, ya fir, you just go to GitHub and you find some repository and you clone that and you've got your project. This isn't how things usually happen. You have to bootstrap a lot. You have to think about these things literally from scratch, right? So success is obviously not guaranteed, and you have to keep at it. You also have to keep at it because I think our field is a very outcome based field. uh, like you need some tangible result, good or bad, but you need some tangible result at the end of all of your experimentation to put on your resume. To there needs to be uh, some condensed, some distillation, some information that you've gathered from that experience. So that is why determination is very important. Again, learning how to read papers, prototyping and reproducing them. Like I said, professors will ask you to. Usually, that is how it happens. There's, of course, I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying that a lot of it could involve this. And last but not the least, I mean, definitely not the least, this is obviously very important. If you plan to pursue research as a career, this is literally the stepping stone, and you have to, I mean, do this if you plan to pursue research, right? Especially if you are looking for maybe a master's program in the future, or a PhD program, if you're that ambitious. So even for a master's program, like if you're very clear that I want to do a thesis based masters, and that this is what I want to do as a career, then it's obviously invaluable, right? So that is why you want to be doing all of this. I think Jay will take over now. Internet, or is it somebody else?
Uh, yeah, yeah. So I'll be going
Okay,
through them.
cool.
Could you go to the next slide? So yeah, this slide was actually borrowed from Swapnil's presentation on internships. So what this says is that before applying to any kind of research internship, there are some things that you should have ready. So the first two are like basic things that you need to have your educational documents, like details in place to fill for the application, and then the next one would be that you need to write a cover letter. So what a cover letter is, it is a miniaturized version of your SOP. So in one page, you have to explain why do you feel that you should be selected for the research opportunity that you are applying to. And most of the institutions that run specific programs ask for the cover letter, and we'll be going through some of them in the next slide. But before that, you'll also need one or two letters of recommendation when you are applying. So generally, you'll have to take them from our college professors, and I don't think they mind if you're applying to a research program that does not overlap with the college period. So they will happily give you letters of recommendation depending on what faculty you take it from. And definitely, like, you need past experience and relevant projects because they need to see something on how to select you for the internships. And if you go to the next slide now. These programs are the main reason that we are having this seminar today, because during our time, first we were not aware of some programs, and the others were like we were too late to apply, or we didn't know about them a lot. So the first one is the MyTax Global Link. So this is conducted by all the good universities in Canada. So they you get to research with a specific university under a professor in Canada, and then they like pay for everything. Like, you can go live in the university campus, and you work under a professor there for the summer. And along with this, like, after you complete your research work and everything, if you think about applying for masters, the MyTax community, if you've interned with the Global Link thing, then they give you a $15,000 scholarship if you're applying to Canadian universities. And the thing is that we missed applying to this 2 years in a row, because this MyTax Global Link has the earliest application of all the research internships. So for this year, it is the end of September. So that's why, like, we thought of having this session early on, so that you get an opportunity to go through it and apply. The next one is summer at EPFL. Now, this is a bit difficult to get into because EPFL is a very good and renowned institute. Like, it comes in top 10 in the world for regarding like research opportunities. But again, it is definitely worth applying to, and all they ask for is a motivation letter and one letter of recommendation. So you should definitely apply. I won't be talking much about Cern Open Lab because we have Swapnil here who will be covering it at the end. He successfully got selected and he completed the whole internship. You also have other programs that we have listed here, like Summer at the rate ETH, Zurich, Max Planck, USC, and CMU RIS. So if any of you are interested in robotics or or you just want to work on reinforcement learning or something like that, CMURIS is a great program. However, it is a bit difficult to get into. So, like, be wary of having a really good profile because from India, they generally select only IITians. But if you have a really exceptional profile, they might take you. And we'll be sharing these slides after the session so you can have a look at the other internship that we've mentioned here. Um, so these are some of the international research internships that we have highlighted here, and Josh will also be going through the domestic internships next. So Josh is currently a research intern at IIT Gandhinagar under Professor Mayank Singh. So he'll also share his experience, like what he felt during the summer. So yeah, Josh.
Swapnil, so would you like to cover Cern part right now or like later on? Like, do you think it fits right in the context right now?
I can step in and cover Cern and hand it over back to you. Um, so, hi everyone, my name is Swapnil. I'm a PhD student at NYU as of now. I used to be, let me know if my volume is high, low, I should speak up. Um,
I think it's a bit low. Probably
Yeah.
maybe you can
okay.
speak a bit louder.
Um, Hi everyone, my name is Swapnil. I'm a PhD student at NYU. I used to be, I did my undergrad at DJ Sangvi. I was in computer engineering, just like all of you, I imagine. And I did a bunch of stuff when I was an undergrad, part of which was also working at Cern. So Cern is this collaboration of 26 to 30 different countries based in France and Switzerland, which does particle physics research. So what I did at CERN initially was I did IT stuff, which is database anomaly detection on database connections. And eventually I got an offer to come back and do physics and machine learning. But the way it started out was just I was in college and I wanted to get out of college, go somewhere, travel, and not have to pay for it. So I applied to a bunch of programs. I think there was about 25 to 30 different international programs. I didn't even count how many local programs I applied to. The upside for me was I was one of the only people applying, so professors were not like very bugged when I went up to them and asked them for letters of preference. And so yeah, you got to figure out like what works for you. But I use the fact that transcripts were relatively easier to get at the time. And so I got those things, I submitted them wherever I could and tried to get some opportunities to go abroad. So around the same time that I got into CERN, I also got into Stanford for summer school, and that you have to pay for that. And I managed to convince a professor at Stanford to do research with me. So kind of offsetting the cost of those things. But so my point is like there are multiple opportunities that are possible, and you have to figure out how to leverage one or two of them into getting what you want. CERN for me started out with this. So I assume you want to focus more on the application procedure here, um, or do you want me to get into the whole experience of the internship?
I think both ways work. So yeah.
Okay. So the application procedure was fairly straightforward. They had an online application. I found as many programs as I could on the CERN website, and I submitted an application for all of them. I applied for a summer student program. I applied for the Open Lab internship program. I applied for the technical student program. The summer programs were for the duration of the summer, while the technical student program was for the duration of the year. At that time, I didn't care like what would happen if I actually got in because I did not really think of like uh, who thinks that far ahead? But I did manage to get into the Open Lab program, and I got into the year-long program. So the college, I mean, I clearly I couldn't leave college for a year and go for the year-long program immediately, but I did manage to convince them to let me go for the summer program. The application materials were fairly straightforward. The one thing, so they asked me a bunch of questions about my background and experiences. They asked me for my resume, and I think these days they also have a video interview where they ask you a set of fixed questions, which is pre-recorded. It's not a live interview. They just record your responses to certain questions. Um, the crucial part of the application process, and this I found out after I got into Cern, is the way they select applicants is basically like there is a list of people, and supervisors for projects have to scroll through this list of people and do a keyword based search to find you. um, Broad strokes, that is how that used to work. I don't know if that is still how it works, but my guess would be that is. The challenge with this sort of approach is there are no predefined filters. So you will be one of many applicants, and if the keyword doesn't pop up on your resume, then you are likely to be overlooked. So the couple of like critical points would be to actually update your resume to include all your experiences, to actually learn to write cohesive essays that describe what you have done, and to actually have done enough to fill the essays out with enough words. So at by the time I had applied to Cern, I had like at least 2 or 3 internships under my belt, and this was alongside college. So this was a lot of hard work, but it was also possible because I didn't have like a lot of travel time from my house to college. So I saved on that and spent that on just working at different companies near college. Um, Cool. So because of a bunch of different experiences in software development at the time, web development, software development, I had no machine learning experience. I got selected for a project that turned out to be a machine learning project. So Open Lab for me was a very good summer. Cern really takes care of its summer students. So they create this whole experience for you more than just like an internship. It's about meeting new people. It's about learning more about Cern. They literally had a summer school for us to attend while we were doing an internship, and your supervisors are supposed to let you go for 2 3 hours in the day just to take lectures, which is super cool, which is also like really nice of them to like create this engagement, and they want you to come back to Cern. So once you get in, it's really like I wouldn't say straightforward, but the likelihood of you getting back in can dramatically increase if you use the opportunities the right way. So I did. So I managed to get back into Cern as a technical student, but we can get into that later. So the first time I got in, college did say no for obvious reasons, that no, you're not leaving college for a year. And I managed to apply again to the technical student program. I managed to get in again. That time, someone in physics selected me. So I had, and that time I went back to college, and I was like, nah, guys, please. Second time, don't make me cancel this opportunity. This is really cool. And by then they were fairly aware. So one thing I should mention was my GPA was really high at the time. So they didn't have a reason to say like, oh, your academics will suffer, because my academics were already like really set by then. In the sense like it's my pointer is not going to change even if it drops drastically in the last 2 semesters. So you really have to cover all bases. I had really good relationships with my professors, so the letters aspect was covered. I had my academics in order. I had a bunch of experiences, and I was also doing a lot of extracurriculars to act that college would benefit from. And I started a bunch of committees at the time, or at least I was involved in groups that started a bunch of committees at the time, and they were going well. So all in all, you do have to spend a lot of effort on top of just applying to actually have the relationships necessary to leverage to use these opportunities when you get in. But obviously, the first part of that is your profile. They do not, to my understanding, they do not look at your GPA, which is a very big deal. And they do not publish projects beforehand, so you do not know what they are looking for. You just know what you have done. which again like underscores the point that you have to do a lot of things. For me, when I applied, I did something really smart, which I now realize was really smart. I looked up past iterations of the same program. I looked up the people who participated. I looked up their backgrounds. There was this girl from Sardar Patel, if I remember correctly, and there was a blog post on some internship website about her experiences. So she had mentioned, this is the project that I worked on, this is the supervisor that I worked with. I looked up the project, I looked up the supervisor, and I was sort of like, okay, this might be something I might be interested in, but like let's mention something about this. And ironically, it turned out the same supervisor selected me for a different project. So do your background reading, do your research. I also communicated with the female, and she was really helpful. So it's important to like write to people, but it's also important to know who to write to and why to write to them. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say for now.
Yeah, thank you. I think
I think
Josh will be
Josh
covering.
you can,
Yeah,
yeah, the next one.
Am I audible?
yeah,
Yeah. So
Yeah,
now I'm going through the research opportunities which are available in India, and almost all the IITs, NITs, and triple ITs have some or the other program either in summer or in winter. And here I've listed a few of the programs which I know about, and I had applied to a few of these programs. So the first one is IIT Gandhinagar's SRIP program. I actually ended up getting selected in this, and I was very lucky because I had a friend studying at IIT Gandhinagar who had worked under the same prof. So I had an idea about the projects and I wrote about them in my SOP. And generally, it is not like the international programs because in many of the IITs, not all the internships are good. For example, some of the seniors had bad experiences at some of the IITs. So I would suggest you look up the prof and talk to someone who has already worked with that prof before to get an idea of how your internship is going to be. And most like cold mailing profs is an option, but applying to these programs would be better because there are higher chances, and some of the profs take students only from these programs. So there are some labs also which you can apply to. For example, the Midas lab at Triple IT Delhi. It is a very good lab for NLP, and there are similar labs at Triple ITs for CV as well. So you can look that up. And then I think Swapnil will be going through the IAS fellowship and the IIT Bombay internship. And
You want me to jump in?
him,
sure.
yes, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure. I think, yeah, you should go through it right now on the IAS thing, and then we could discuss
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So the IAS fellowship was something I just found while I was Googling stuff online again. I was in the same state. I want to go out. I don't know where I want to go. I will go wherever I'm allowed to go. And a lot of places where I'm not allowed to go, we'll figure it out. The IAS fellowship came up because I had the material. So I had materials ready. Basically, I had a bunch of essays. So applying to 20 to 30 different international places is very hard because each of them requires custom essays. But after a point, you start realizing similarities and you start creating these sections where you have these questions and these answers pre-made or pre-written, and you can just like modify or tweak those answers to fit in wherever you go. This is also like great practice for your masters because forcing yourself to think critically about your own work, basically salesmanship. This is like sales and marketing, because there will be other students with your experiences. There will be a lot of other students with more experiences. So it's not about saying I am the most qualified for this. It's about how to sell yourself in terms of here is why you should pick me, without actually saying those words. So you need to figure out what your unique selling point is, and you need to use that. For me, my unique selling point was I've done web development, software development, front end, back end, mentored people, good leadership skills. I have like a experience with communication, I used to write like really good. Well, now I think they're shitty, but at the time I thought they were really good descriptions of my work. Um, and I think that really helps if you're able to portray your work in like in a way that actually shows why it is important, rather than just saying, oh, I used 5 technologies to build this project, now we have deployed it here, that's it. You want to talk about the problems you are solving, not the products you are building. So with that, like the IAS fellowship, the application was very straightforward. There was almost nothing that they asked, other than like my GPA and some lines about my experiences. In fact, if I remember correctly, it was very limited, and I had to really work hard to cut things down and write like a little bit about myself. So I was very surprised when I actually got in. And they had an offer where I could have gone to, I forget which IIT, but there was a professor who worked on algorithms who selected my application, and the only reason I didn't go was because it clashed with other stuff. But that at the time that was the application. I imagine it's much more detailed now, or at least I hope it's much more detailed now. But GPA was a big deal, a big factor in that selection process. I also, okay, I should add a couple of sentences about IIT Bombay. So I also worked at IIT Bombay as
Yeah.
part of the Lavya program. So all these IITs basically do summer internships for students all across the country, which is great because like it gives you access to these professors who otherwise would only be accessible to the students who got into these IITs. The downside is obviously like every professor is not great, and especially when it comes to summer internships, most professors don't spend a lot of time on interns who come from other colleges, sometimes for good reason, because who is going to sit and explain to all these new kids what you're doing given that they're going to go away after the summer? Like it's not worthwhile for them to invest as much time. That said, it would be very nice if they still did. So the professor I worked with at the time did not, I did not see his face throughout the summer. I saw his admin's face. The admin was not, well, there were different opinions people had about the admin. A lot of them were not great, but my team was really nice. So the people I worked with were amazing. They were there. They were there as 6 month interns, 1 year and 2 year interns, and we were working on some stuff. So we would discuss some tasks, and I would carve out work for myself and complete it. And towards the end of it, like it worked out such that Microsoft Research, who was funding the project, actually asked me to give a presentation to them and talk about like what was the kind of work I did in the summer. But it should like that work was largely a product of what the students and I actually worked out more than what was given to me. What was given to me was not great work. It was basically documentation. And I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I will do this, but I have time and I have like some expertise. I can put that to better use doing other things. So again, like even at IIT Bombay, this happens. So it's not like it's not anyone's fault, but it's just systems are broken sometimes and shit happens. But the nice thing that happened out of that was I reached out to another professor who was working on Blender and animation, and that was something I really liked and I wanted to learn about. So I took an animation course and I became a course instructor for his online animation course. Super nice professor, senior researcher at the time, I think. And I don't remember how I reached out to him, but he had an office and I camped outside his office for a day or two. Basically bumped into him, but he was very nice about it. He gave me some insights. We started working on a research paper together, and it actually ended up becoming my first semi-serious publication. But it was great work. I learned a lot, and I still have a good relationship with him. So again, like bad things might happen, just go and talk to people. At the time I did go to the dean of IIT Bombay and tell him, sir, this is happening, like what is going on? And there were some measures made to address the issue. There were some changes that came about, but don't be afraid to like complain, but complain for the right reasons in the right way. And to be clear, like I wasn't complaining, I was just like asking for advice with my issue. So I met some really nice people. and I maintained those relationships. Those were important because I really liked the papaya milkshake at IIT Bombay. And in order to get in, you need to know who you're going to meet. I'm not joking about this. Like the papaya milkshake, ridiculous as it might sound, was brilliant. And I did visit on many occasions just to go have that. And it's so cheap. Anyway, back to the point. Like IIT Bombay, that was my experience. I believe this translates to many other programs just because the minute you try to scale summer programs, you're going to have issues. But by and large, those are still good opportunities for you. So by all means, make the most of it.
Yeah, so most of these programs
Um,
basically,
Sorry to interrupt, but we should pause and take questions at some point in the middle of the presentation, or at least let them unmute and ask questions.
yeah, sure, now would be a good time.
Yeah, like this is completely informal, so like you can ask anything
Yeah,
related to research.
So we will have an unrecorded section. So if you have
Yeah.
specific questions that you would prefer not to be recorded, also there will be time for that as well.
Yeah.
While people muster up the courage to ask questions, I'm going to add that we are not usually in the habit of tracking down people who leave calls, and I don't know what are they planning to do with them, but this is not usually what Unicode research is about, so don't worry about that. Yeah. 30 more seconds for the first brave soul to ask a question.
Hello.
Even if it's stupid, like yeah, it's fine. Like just
I
Hello.
ask.
unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lokita. I'm in the second year right now. So first of all, I am in too much of Swapnil's, overall journey in BTech. I just wanted to ask what was the timeline of like the research internships that you did? Like when did you do which internship? Because you mentioned the one at Cern and then the one at IIT Bombay. So then which one did you do when and
That's a great point. So IIT Bombay, I believe, was after my second year. So 2014, I started my undergrad in August 2014, first semester, second semester, third semester, and then I went for the internship. No, fourth semester. Yeah. After 2 years of engineering, I went for my IIT Bombay summer internship. After the third year, I went for my Cern summer internship. And then I managed to go back to Cern before my semester, before college ended in the last semester. So that I largely spent abroad.
right? Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, that feel free to interrupt us in the middle of the presentation if you have any questions.
also, I would like to point out that you all should read Swapnil's blog about these internships. They are really awesome. Yeah. And should we go on to the next slide? So I think Jay and Aryan, would you like to continue?
Yeah. So just would you go to the next slide? I think it's okay. So now like basically coming to cold emailing or like writing to profs directly. So like what we covered first part was basically a bit easier. This is a bit harder task like compared to the first part. So like you should try to like do your way from both sides and see which way works well. So like you it might be possible that you could end up like getting good opportunities using like this approach as well. So like basically the motivation behind like writing this thing is first thing that is most obvious, like as an undergrad might be like you might be just looking for some opportunities like to collaborate, like get some research experience and all. The second might be a bit like when you get a bit experience in terms of like going through the works, like you have like some questions about their research, maybe some like you point out some things, like have comments about that work and like you would like to discuss with them. So that's the second way you do around, like basically sort of like cold meal professors and researchers. But in this case, like as an undergrad, it's very difficult to get the second part first. So yeah, it's more into like the first part, like you like just look for some opportunity, like you don't have much what I mean, the restrictions in terms of you want to work on this only and this only. You are just like looking out sort of if there is any opportunity that I can grasp and make most out of it right now. And like for writing the school email sort of like to profs directly, so in this case like the response rate is pretty low, like because it like different profs get mails from a lot of students, and you can also imagine like if you are like basically loaded with like tons of mail like daily, it might be very hard to respond to each and every mail. Like so in this case the key is like the response rate is very low, so you have to be patient and also like basically try on like reaching out to more people. You might get one shot like somewhere at the end. And like the key point for this is as well, your emails also should be short and descriptive enough, and it should not be generic templates like that are available online, because then the chances are that it might just like end up in the spam. They might have already that filters in the email like which would like just track and like yeah put the mail in spam. So like in order to like get their attention, you need to be as specific as possible and like need to stand out among the other applications, like other mails that are there basically for the candidates. And also the other thing in this case is important is like you should be polite like when basically writing things, and like you should not like overstate something or like that. Be honest about like whatever things you have and try to match it up like in a way such that it seems nice and reasonable, sort of like as a convincing story. So yeah, it's a lot of effort, but like once you like get some opportunity out of it, you will be amazed and like you'll enjoy it. Like so I can say from my experience, like currently I was planning to go for masters, but ended up like taking a gap year. So in this case, I had like I didn't had any second plan, so I tried reaching out to profs, and out of reaching out, I think I reached out to 40 to 50 profs, and out of them, I only three or four replied. So like you can imagine the response rate being like very low, and like it's uh, you might be lucky sometimes to get more response, but yeah, otherwise it's not the usual case. And out of all that, like it's not like everyone will like basically directly take you. They might like then have some interviews, discussions, and like around it. So this is just one way, like basically where you can get their attention and like such that they know and okay that you are interested, and like yeah. Could you go to the next slide? Okay. So like basically now like let's go through some of the examples like what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So like the red ones highlighted are like the bad mails. So like basically like you ask them for like looking at SOP or like some other things, and like sort of like during applications or something like that. So like they will not like entertain that mails and they will directly ignore it. So the coming back to the other parts of like the ones that might be like helpful for our interest is like try to be more specific in the mails, like avoid sort of generic stuff mentioning, like back it with some evidence that you have and make a convincing pitch such that it like feels that okay now whatever you have, like whatever skill sets you bring on table and whatever I am doing sort of for a professor, like, this matches, and like we might end up like somewhere in the loop and like can get something working here. So here the example, if you see like basically one like sort of hello I am X. So like I have X questions listed below which I think might be able to answer because of X. So here you are trying to be more specific, like that is maybe this might be like because like that prof has written some paper and you have some questions that you would like to discuss, and you are basically asking about that questions and like trying to understand okay what the idea was behind the paper or something like that. And in this case, like based on these conversations, then you drive this thing towards more like if there is any opportunity, like would it like would you be willing to take me or something like or discuss over it like that way. The other part in this case is like let's say you are working on some idea or like you have some ideas and that is related to some professor's work and you are pitching in that sense. So like you are trying to build a connection between both of these works. And in this case, if you notice, like the template or basically the examples that are there, they are basically trying to be more specific, like in terms of how that prof's work relates with your, or like how that, why that prof only, like instead of going over some generic mails. So that is like probably the key important thing in this case. And the other is don't exaggerate much, because yeah, they would anyway catch it, and like yeah, then you would like that is also bad part basically in this case. So like yeah, so more examples can be found here. Can you go to the next slide? So this is like sort of some general template that might be helpful, but this is not like some fixed rule of thumb. So like it's okay to use this, but as long as you like follow the main idea like out of what you expected, like when you write this cold emails, it is fine if you use some other structures as well. So in this case, the if I say this is some like let's say cold email that is there, so like written to a prof. So in this case, like if you see the candidate is first trying to introduce like uh, give his some background, like basically introduce himself. After that, like basically maybe sort of some incident, like let's say like the work that he read and like that is related, and like he thinks that it's a good interest. But after that, like once he like claim okay that this is a good interest, and you need to describe that thing like sort of. So in this case, the key things might be like sort of, let's say for this example, if we can think of, so here you are like describing the paper, or like something at least like that shows that you have understood the paper, went through their work, and like some questions or some thoughts that you have about that. The other might be like in a way if you have some like ideas also which further could extend this work and you want to collaborate with them. And in all like doing all this thing, like okay, you have ideas, you have like let's say you went through their work and like that way, that seems like more convincing. But like how well they do know, like basically whether you have like that skill sets or not. So you also need to have like a bit of background about yourself, like how whatever you have done in the past relates to what you are right now. And like basically that is also in a way sort of bridging the gap and like trying to give professor more context about like how you are as a candidate maybe. And then like the other things are basically you provide some supporting material such as like resume, other would be like transcripts or something else, like or like he might give you some task and like that way. So this can go like basically yeah. So this is like the way probably you should you can approach, like but this is not guaranteed like basically that it might work. It's basically you try different things, see how it works, and then you iterate and update like. So this is probably I can say like the major uh, thing for like the recipe you can think of like for cold mailing, but it's not that too difficult in a way. It just you need to be more specific and like avoid like uh, in more generality like that is available out there. So I think yeah, like so. Aryan, do you have anything else to add? Probably I think specifically in context of
Um,
IITs.
so
Yes, ma'am.
before we go to Aryan,
Mm-hmm.
if anyone has any questions regarding the template and everything, so
Yep.
like if you also have any question like on what day you should send an email or at what time, you could also ask that because people also generally track such things. So any questions regarding cold mailing, email template and something, or else Aryan will be mentioning some points next regarding IIT cold
One
mailing.
yeah. So like I think the key points other than this are also like basically uh, sort of let's say if you don't get reply like from a professor, don't bug him like repetitively like sending like follow-ups like that way. It is like okay if you send like let's say after 2 weeks and like that way, but like once you send like if the prof doesn't reply, then understand that like he's not interested or he doesn't have any opening. Yeah, so don't keep on like going doing these things, but otherwise it creates a bad impression and like he might block you completely. Like so whenever like if there might be any opportunity in future, he will probably reach out.
Okay, so I just wanted to talk a bit
I
about
think
the section.
yeah, go on.
I'm audible, right? Or am
Yeah,
I
you're
not?
audible.
Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about just to say on ground.
Aryan, it,
Yeah.
basically I think someone had questions.
Yeah, I had a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry. Yeah.
Like,
Sure.
where and how do you find professors like that you might want to work with, or
Just
Um.
okay. So like
Yeah.
No
for
problem. I'll
finding out.
share my screen.
Yeah. So for finding out professors, like there can be two ways. So one is like probably you like let's say go through the website and look if there is any opening available. So that is one way. The other is like you should like like stay updated on Twitter and like follow some of the people. So like there are like different like options. So where like basically they share about like there's open positions available like where they want to collaborate or something like that way. The other way might be like if let's say some PhD student is looking for some opportunities, so you can also like go over that and like connect with professors. So that is also another way like you can like work and collaborate with them. So this two probably are like the ways. Apart from that, like you can also like in general, let's say if you find something fascinating and if you like their ideas and you think that there might be some way like you could like work further and extend this work, and it seems reasonable, then it would be advisable to discuss with them, like send them email, and yeah, they would try to reach out. So, but yeah, like I think reaching out uh, based on like professor's website, checking out if there are any positions like in the labs. Then next thing is reaching out to PhD students if there is any opportunity, like if they want any like research mentees like under them, like basically want like, who can collaborate and like basically help them out. And the other things are like yeah, staying updated with the following some like basically accounts on Twitter, like basically which posts about this opportunity is available.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions or
Yeah, hello.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, so one of y'all mentioned that if y'all have questions regarding what time to message and when to message.
Mhm.
So yeah, now I have that question. So
I'll answer that. I'll answer that in a bit. Actually, yeah, I'll answer that. Is there any other question? Just go
right,
ahead.
okay.
Okay, so actually, like I just want to thoda sa matlab, so I think what Jay described is quite general in the sense that all of these things will apply to every single place that you're going to apply to, right? So for me personally, so there's two ways that you can look at it, right? One is that you're interested in something very specific, and so you look for professors who are good at it, who are doing research in that area, and then you contact them, right? So that is obviously the most ideal situation where you're already proficient to some degree, or you know that you're interested in something, and that is what you I mean that is exact. So here I'm not talking about just machine learning in general. I'm talking about, oh, I'm interested in uh, like scene understanding in computer vision or something like that. I'm interested in name entity recognition or just a very specific thing, right? So you're looking for the professors who are experts at that. uh, for me it wasn't like that because I personally I was quite clueless, and I didn't know a lot of things. So my thing was that if I get an opportunity under any professor, I'm going to end up doing it, and I don't really care about the topic or anything, because it's all about learning something new. So that is how it was for me. So that is one thing that I want to talk about, and the second thing is that so here's the thing, right? As you uh, the research programs where you apply to, right? So like the ones that Josh mentioned, the one at IIT Gandhinagar and so on. So these programs, because you know that there is an application process involved, there is a selection process involved, you know for a fact that there is going to be some good work that is going to happen here, right? There is very little there is very little vagueness about it, right? I mean, of course you could have an experience like Swapnil did with the IIT Bombay card, the one that he mentioned, the documentation thing, but that is, I think, still on the rarer side, where uh, if you apply to a proper program, then there is a very high probability that you'll actually end up doing some good work. So if you look at the Indian institutes, right? So as you start going down the list of the IITs, you'll realize that the kind of work that you're going to end up doing will the probability of doing good work will start से धीरे धीरे कम होते जाएगा. तो uh, what that also means is that there are obviously going to be a lot more people cold mailing the professors at, say, an IIT Bombay versus say an IIT Goa, right? So that was something that I tried to use to my advantage, because I obviously knew that one of the more obscure IITs, I mean, people really aren't going to be mailing every single professor at those IITs, and this was something that I observed after my entire cold mailing process as well, which was that honestly not a single professor from any of the old IITs actually replied. Like that was the extent. Now I don't know if my mail was bad or my profile wasn't a good fit or XYZ, right? But on the other hand, some of the smaller IITs I got a lot of responses, of which I ended up like I'm pursuing two internships now at IIT Patna. So under two different professors. So that is a just like a hint, right? That if you are desperate and you don't really know कि मेरे को क्या करना है, and you're open to things, then it would actually be in your advantage to apply to send cold mails to some of the lower IITs. There is a very high probability. I think I just sent like 30 mails, and of those 30 I got 3 4 responses, of which of course two I accepted. So that is one, right? um, yeah, that is one. And two, one other tip that I found was that a lot of times the professors in the computer science engineering department, the CSE departments, they'll receive a shit ton of mails. So instead of sending mails to them, try to send it to some of the professors in the EE departments, or some of the adjacent departments. But these professors will, of course, they need to have research interests that are similar to the kind of thing that you want to do. I don't mean in a very like specific way, but say just machine learning or AIML. If you know that their research interests are those, then send applications to them, because they usually work on the same problems. And I mean, it's definitely compare. There's no like discrepancy between अच्छा ये लोग बहुत अच्छा काम कर रहे, ये लोग नहीं कर रहे. So that is two. The time wala that Lokita was asking about. So I found it very beneficial to send mails uh, in the morning. I won't say early morning, but in the morning, like 9 10 ish. So that is, I think that is when people just wake up and they're looking at their phones. And that was my assumption as well. So I think of the 3 or 4 responses that I got, actually two of them I got a response immediately. Like I sent the mail out at I think around 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m., and by 10 o'clock I'd already gotten a response. So that was something that I found beneficial, and especially on Mondays. So don't send a mail on Saturday or Sunday. I don't think. I mean, people usually just log off at that time, right? So try to send one on a proper weekday. Ensure that it's not a holiday, a national holiday, or anything of that sort. Send it on a Monday. I know these are just ऐसे मतलब हवे में tricks है, but you never know what works, right? So you want to just increase the probability of success. So that is there as well. Apart from that, what else should I mention? Cold mailing, yeah, send it to as many professors as you can. So what I did was literally just look up IIT Patna faculty, and then it's literally like going through every single अच्छा ये professor का website है, this is what he's interested in, this is what he's worked on. Draft a mail, draft a generic mail. I drafted a generic mail that I sent to every single professor. There were only one or two who were like really my research interests were aligning, so I changed a few words, but I just sent a generic mail to all of them. And yeah, yeah, I think that's what I wanted to add. So IITs, I think IITs are a very good like way to get in on this, especially some of the smaller IITs for sure. Like there's a lot of untapped stuff there. If you get into an IIT Delhi or an IIT Bombay research program, kudos, that's amazing. But yeah, if you're like me and you're this late to the process, I just started my internship like 2 months ago, a month or two ago. So I didn't even know about any of this, about any of the IIT programs or anything. And this was how quick I was able to transition into it. So I'm sure that with all of the time that you have, you will definitely be able to. So yeah, whoever's next. Sorry for taking up so much
And
time.
yeah,
Can I
uh,
ask something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so normally when we're talking about tech internships, we tend to have an idea that you need to have like this like at least one project with that specific language or in that domain. So then for research internships, like what is one of the things that you should have, which will be like a thing that okay, if you have this, then it just increases your chances of getting selected. Like I don't know if I'm clear enough, but
are you asking what kind of prior experience is required such that you can demonstrate कि मेरे को इतना तो आता है, so you know
Yes,
what I could
exactly.
be a good intern. So I think just having a nice project, like if you're interested in some, I, I mean this is, if anybody else wishes to pitch in at this, I mean, I think just having a good project, like a proper project, have a good documented project, write a blog if you can about it, have a proper, you know, collab setup, all of the code should be visible. Um, what else could it be? I mean, if you have a publication, then that's amazing. So that is something that you can definitely put out there. Yeah.
So in addition to this, I think we should ask Swapnil this question. He had everything on his profile when he like applied to these programs, so he would be better able to answer it.
Yeah.
Are we talking about the IIT summer internship program?
No, like basically, what like is sort of what do they in general expect like from someone who is applying for like let's say this research programs or reaching out to jobs, especially for research related opportunities. So like, what do they look for? Like, so probably if you could like highlight that.
I didn't sorry, I didn't follow what you said.
So like, what I'm saying is, like let's say someone wants to like approach, look, find the research opportunity like it, irrespective of like, let's say like the programs or like cold milling, but like what do they generally look for? Like what sort of skill sets they look for?
Okay, so there is no general answer to this question. I'm very sure about that because everyone looks for something different. The one thing that people look for in common are students that are unique. I have, otherwise you can think of, so you can think about it as 10 people are writing to a professor, five of them have the same experiences. So if you're going to be one of those five people, then it is basically a random chance. They're probably going to pick the one from the better university or the university that they know. Um, on in general, what I have been told that people look for first, the first and most important way to get in is knowing someone. If you know the PhD student and the PhD student tells the professor, I have this kid that I want to work with, they are going to take you on. High likelihood. Of course, knowing the professor helps even more, but that's usually not the case with us. Um, so, and I've been noting down stuff in a document that I'll share at some point after this call or during this call. So that's what I was focusing on. They're looking for diversity of experiences specific to their project. So you need to, like for me, the big boost was I know a bit of research, but I know a lot of software development. I think that helped me. And with software development, I know full stack. I've done full stack. I know backend, front end, whatever. I have enough projects to convince someone that you can actually do know what you're talking about. I have interned at more companies, not well-known companies, but at least enough companies for them to be beyond doubt that okay, like this kid might know something. Like you don't intern at 3 or 4 companies if you don't know anything. Like nepotism might work for one internship, 2 internships, not 4 internships. So like basically you are selling yourself to convince them that like I do actually know my field. Um, it would help if you had sort of like a research publication or a project that is similar to what you are applying to work on. A GitHub project works. A knowledge of popular tools in their domain these days. If you're doing NLP, then knowing Hugging Face, knowing PyTorch, and stuff like that, or even like a small scale cool project. Like you don't have to build another GPT or a big language model or like a billion scale transformer, whatever. Just knowing like this is how I use the transformer to I don't know, generate some sort of description for my society webpage or some random stuff like that. But like knowledge of this technology and one cool application that you built out on your own, those sorts of things matter. Um, if you don't, I mean, ideally you want research experience to get more research experience, but that is like a cycle. I'm assuming like you want to enter that cycle and not just continue. Continue, you guys would be able to figure out on your own. So my advice was how to enter this cycle.
So I think in general it summarizes like it they look more about your like problem solving skills, like how good you are at thinking something, and like how could like, so let's say if you think something, but then how could you can translate that to like code and prototype it as well. So this two things I feel like are more important in a way, like if you want to like think of into research aspect. So yeah, work on this sort of aspect, and yeah, in the long run it would help you, like, uh, because yeah, like in research as it is said, like, see, there won't be any code available right away. So yeah, you need to be able to like think and like translate that to code like later. So that is, I think, probably. And the other is, yeah, toolings related to the frameworks and all different things like that the professor works on, and like, yeah, in the middle of the field. So that is good to have. Apart from this, like just one more point to add, like, so for like if you are thinking of mailing like the professors like that are uh, abroad universities, like, so probably like try to avoid mailing them during some conference deadlines, because chances are they might not uh, reply back, or like they might just ignore that mail. So like don't like mail them around the conference deadlines, because they are busy and they have like a lot of papers to go over and like submit. So probably I try to avoid that. Yeah, I think Aryan, you can go ahead.
I was saying, Jay, you had this. I think Jay has a great GitHub repository where he's implemented different research papers. I think. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think something like that would be like super duper useful. Like if I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is exactly the kind of stuff they they want, right? That you've
Like
taken
in
notes.
general it helps out, like, yeah, like, yeah, write blogs about things like that fascinates you. That also like shows your thinking ability and how well you are able to understand and digest content and frame it in a way so that it is like easily understandable by others too. So there is not like one fix, like in this case the way to go about. You can like try to like achieve at the same goal, like taking multiple parts. So like the one that worked for me maybe like was like just annotating the research papers and like implementing them completely from scratch for one time, at least to understand what is working behind the scenes. But then yeah, you would like usually end up using the like libraries that are built around that. Yeah, this might be different for others, but yeah, like, you can try different things, see what works for you, and like if you like that thing, keep on going doing that thing, and yeah, go forward for it. Like that way it helps more, I think. Probably, yeah, I think Aryan is going to cover it this one. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so research startups and open communities. So these are some of the more these are tough. I mean, I this is there anybody among us who's actually a part of any of this? Because so to be clear, research startups are essentially just companies who do a lot of research like within their sort of domain, and they usually publish white papers and stuff like that. So the three companies that I've listed, Neural Space, LNAI, and Haptic, we have seniors who have gone on to all of these companies. So Neural Space, I'm sure, like for a 100%, they've like published proper research papers and good research papers as well. Alan AI as well, they definitely do this kind of stuff, and Haptic too, to a certain degree. But I think Haptic is more on the applied side. But um, I mean, this is quite obvious, right? Why this is difficult, because this is like a straight up job. This isn't just, okay, I'm applying as an intern and I'm going to be working. Like, I actually, now that I think of it, I haven't seen many companies who like take up like proper machine learning or artificial intelligence research interns. I think there might be a few, but they're incredibly rare. But again, this is where you're really getting paid as well. So this is obviously quite rewarding. And this is,
This, yeah,
yeah,
just one more point. So this would be more of like applied research side of things. So where
correct.
let's say there would be like some collaborators and you would be working with them jointly, but you will be not primarily working on like the research aspects just only like that. So it will be back and forth between like, okay, whatever things like there is happening in the pipeline, you will be responsible for developing that and putting it to a production system soon. So it's a mix of both,
Right. So
at
this
least
would
for
be
research
more of
startups.
a machine learning engineering intern sort of thing, where you,
Yeah.
yeah, building stuff for the company's machine learning pipelines and stuff. So that those are these startups, right? Then you have open communities. Open communities are, I mean, they are it's in the name. It's an open community which you can just join. Literally anybody can just join. They usually have Discord servers that you can just be a part of, and they have events. So they are, like I said, so these are just structure around social interactions where you have to put yourself out there. You have to participate in discussions, and they have like paper readings where like weekly they have they have a reading group. We also have a reading group, by the way, at Unicode, but their reading groups are like they'll pick up this one paper, and ye hafte mein everybody will read that paper, and they'll have different formats of getting to the depth of, so there are different formats. I won't go into those details, but yeah, there's a lot of scope here as well, right? And there are some very like elite researchers who are involved in some of these groups. So there is an opportunity to just jump and to get this opportunity to work with them. I think I'm not sure why it isn't mentioned, but MLC is one of the bigger ones. It's recently gotten very famous, and of course these are the these ones are also like really good ones. So there's obviously opportunities here as well that you can leverage. Yep.
Yeah, and also it might be interesting to join the startups as well, because the idea is like they put up some like software as a service like in the market, and like basically there are challenges behind like that system. So you'll be specifically working on like real life projects. So like so this is more of like parallel like working on like basically both sort of aspects. So like where let's say you have some research, you are doing that and you are putting it that into the place which benefits society. Like the other side of research, it's more of like you try to do things, you experiment with different ideas and like try it out. So like there are two different things of research. So one, like depending on which like really interests you, you can like go in that directions. So, I think, mm, so I think probably just can you move to the next one? Yeah, next slide. So like now coming back to like this research venue, so like we see you will be, let's say, published like once like you get some experience, you'll like work on some other ideas of your own as well, like in groups, and it will tend like you will try to publish some papers, right? So in this case, like if you talk about A's or conferences, like there are different like categories of conferences, starting from like A to like C. So A's being the really the highest category, sort of like the good conference, like the top conferences, like from then to like C. So like it decreases like like that way. But yeah, like for the top conferences, like the chances are like it might be very hard, because like the researchers those who have like a lot of experience and like basically um, sort of different like what I mean collaborations are working across different institutes and all, like basically they end up publishing there, like, and it is very difficult to get there because like the acceptance rate is very basically around 10 to 25% like on an average sort of for the good conferences, like if you talk about. But if like that's still very hard, but like the other good part is like this conferences have a lot of workshops in it. So these workshops are basically uh, sort of framed towards a particular domain or like sort of some category. So like some of them would be, let's say, working on some XYZ field, and like the other would be like on other fields. So you can try to like publish the papers at these workshops, because this might be achievable, and this is like really good compared to like mediocre conferences. Like so getting like publishing the paper, or else like getting feedback from like the collaborators that are like really in the top basically in this particular field, and getting reviews from them, that is also really helpful, and like it would motivate you to work better, and like we see later on like I will also publish it in this workshops too. And the other part in this case is like so there is like there's two ideas in a way. So one is like basically first thing you mostly think about, okay, I will first like write a good paper and then start publishing in like that. The other is like the second way around, so where you like basically, let's say, get something at least out of the way, so that at least gets you started. And like it's okay to have like first one or two papers crappy, like mine is also crappy research papers like at the start, but at least like it gets you started, and now as you keep on like getting some experience, you should avoid doing that thing repetitively. And like basically this would like just help you get started, and like in a way you can think of it as like a jump start, like giving you like so get into the research. And then once you like, let's say, do this one or two papers, then you should realize this thing early, and like then try to like focus more on like the quality rather than the quantity. Quantity is not going to help, like basically, let's say in the long run, like at least I can say quality would like help you like a lot. So yeah, can you go to the next slide? Yeah, so these are like some of the top venues like for different fields that we have. So like for CV, there are like these three probably conferences like CVPR, ECCV, ICCV, and all. Similarly, for the others as well, we have highlighted. So in this case, for like if you think of like CVP or ECCV, so there are like basically 10,000 plus like submissions, paper submissions are out of them only like 1,000, like somewhere around 1,500 or something gets accepted. So you can imagine like the acceptance ratio being how much like basically for this particular conferences, and it's very hard to get in like. So yeah, it's okay like if you like let's say get rejects as well, like don't be discouraged like but just keep on like improving your work and try to get like it at some other conferences and like improve it on suppose. So yeah, there are different other like conferences as well available, and the other like we have released. So there are also this rolling review based system, so where they have like this rolling reviews like once in a month sort of period for 12 months. So like the conferences might be like only once in a year, but the other good part is like this, there are other opportunities available where you can like publish, let's say, papers throughout the year. So like it's a way of like you can think of like a review system which gives you a review, you improve it, and like that way you keep on, and like once that it gets accepted, it will be published in some of their journals or like that. So like the associations they have, and the other is like the archive preprint. If yeah, later once you like may like some of you might know about like this. So most of the papers today like are published in archive like as a preprint, and like then they end up published like at some good conferences. But like yeah, this is like the probably I can say like the normal standard right now. Like you see, like if you publish at archive, so yeah, that is also good. Like I can say, and there are other journals as well, like such as Elsevier, Spinger, and Taylor and Francis. So like you can publish chapters as well. So there are like different sort of papers as well you can think of. So one is like this research papers that are there. Others you can think of in the chapters, like you can write that thing. And in research papers also there are two ways. So one is like actually the something new novel research paper. Other is more of like a survey paper. So like there are just different types, and you can like try it out, and like yeah, it's initially it's fine like if you have bad papers, one or two, but yeah, then uh, wake up and yeah, try to work on quality and focus on more like the quality of work, I think. So yeah, would anyone like to add any point for this? Probably, if I might have missed something.
Uh, so
Sorry.
you might want.
Yeah, your voice is not like clear.
Yeah. So I'm saying that not all international journals and conferences are good. So before publishing your paper, you might list at predatoryjournals.com and check if the journal or the conference is predatory or not.
There are different like ways you can see like whether this conference is good or not, like that way. So yeah, that like yeah, this list goes over like sort of the good conferences and workshops. So yeah, probably that is like there are other ways as well, like GitHub and all. Like people have a lot of discussions on Reddit too, so you can follow that things too as well, I think. Yeah. So just could you move to the next slide? I think yeah, just yeah, one more slide. Yeah, so these are like some of the like resources that we feel might help you like in some way. So like basically in order to keep up with research, like understanding like research papers is really important part, and it will come up with practice. Like we also sometimes don't understand papers, and also yeah, it is a more of like an ongoing process like where you keep on improving, and yeah. So yeah, like if you like get better at like understanding like research papers, and yeah, like you'll be better able to understand different concepts, and like yeah, you'll be quickly able to navigate through and like think about more other opportunities too. So there are two guides I have like linked here, like how to read a research paper for like by K. S. Keshav from Waterloo, and like by Professor Jason Eisner from GITU. So they both like present you like how to read a research paper, and like yeah, there are different strategies like you can experiment and see which works for you best. The other way I can say like basically following up some like blogs from good like people in the field like are also another way of like keeping up with research. So if you don't want to read like papers, you like that way, so you can like basically get the gist and the main content out of it. But yeah, I would suggest at least try to read few research papers at least like a month, so that like keeps you get going and you have a good practice over it. And also there are like some good guides about writing like research papers too, like from Stanford and like MSR research. And apart from this, like there is other like two different things for like writing a research paper as well. So one is like basically you first start like just you have some idea, you like wait for like let's say you experiment to see how it goes, and then you like start writing a paper. The other is like you have some idea, you first articulate that, like put it on document properly, which like helps you more clearly like navigate and like maybe think help you think up with more experience and like something else also that might help you in like the further way. So there are these two approaches, and you can like try different things and like see which way works well for you. But yeah, like these are the two paradigms, and I would suggest like writing things help before, like so that way you also as you keep on writing you also get more clarity, okay, what exactly you're trying to solve. And as you keep on like doing this thing initially, that is better because then you can lay out your experiments and everything around that, sort of compared to like going the other way, sort of where you have idea, then you first like experiment and see, okay, if it works then you write and like that. But yeah, like that this can be like people might have different experiences and like others, some things might work for one, some things might not work for other. So yeah, like all of this is like much more like based on experimenting and seeing out which works well for you. Probably I think if Swapnil would like to talk about that point, like sort of whether to write more clearly based on the idea, or like first go out with the carrying out experiments for idea and then writing out the paper, which way, like probably yeah, based on your experience maybe.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't follow your last statement. So.
So like there are these two paradigms, right? So one is like basically you have some idea, you first start writing it out and like basically send it to people, like so that like and actually you also get more clarity over okay, what exactly you're trying to do. And basically that is one way like you can go about research, and the other is like you have some ideas, you perform experiments around that, and you write a research paper. But like once first for the first idea, like you have some idea, you write it, put it on paper, helps you get more clarity. Maybe it might help you like expand something else also other than that what you had thought of initially for just the experiments. So which way you think is the best, or like which what way you prefer, probably based on your experience?
This is a great question. So I started with very unstructured approaches to research. I was just like, oh, we'll discuss some ideas with my advisors and like we'll come up with something and we'll figure something out. And that works. Again, it everything works subject to what your style is and what your advisor's style is. At that point, that was not a good approach because half the time I wasn't understanding what my advisors were trying to convey. I was not smart enough to gather those things and implement them immediately. So we spent a couple of months just talking to each other with me not completely following what they were saying, but a little bit of also like on my end, it was also like a fear of asking too many stupid questions. Like of course I asked them some because if there are three people in the room and two of them know what they're talking about, then the third guy is really going to be the one like asking all the questions. And I feel like I sort of missed out on asking, like I should have not been afraid. It's very easy to say don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, but yeah, I believe there are stupid questions and I'm very well aware that I'm going to ask a stupid question. And despite that, just asking them because I need to make progress is a really hard thing to do, or at least was. Now I'm no longer afraid. Um, because now I realize I'm going to waste more time if I don't ask those questions. Anyway, the structure part came in when like I joined a different lab. I was like, okay, in this lab I have to write a proposal before a discussion. So even eventually, like even with my advisors originally, they realized like, okay, make him write an agenda so that he knows what he's going to ask us in the meeting. What are the questions that he wants to get clear? So agendas are like, here is what I have done, here is what I want to discuss, here is what I propose to do, which you fill in after the meeting. So those kinds of things, like just adding more structure with Unicode research. Also, we started keeping detailed notes of each session, like these minutes of the meeting and all this stuff. That sounds like administrative mumbo jumbo is actually super useful, especially at early stages. So like structure is important. It doesn't matter where it comes from, whether it comes from agendas, whether it comes from writing like a proposal style research, like starting research by writing a proposal style document. and you will be bad at it to begin with. You will not want to do it. You will hate doing it. You will be really bad at it. A combination of those things. But trust me, it will make like life much easier for you. I'm actually, I don't know how I can share this doc. Maybe I can just walk you through it. Um, Sorry, we can go back to the present. So that was my advice, that like structure forces you to be clearer. It's the same with research. It is the same with emails. Force yourself to 5 sentences, to a 5 sentence limit, and then you have to convey, like, that is an elevator pitch. Like, it's really, there is a reason it's really hard to make good elevator pitches, because it forces you to think. It's the same thing with like agendas. It's the same thing with research proposals. Like, you have to be clear, but you also have to be concise.
Also, Swapnil, if you want to share your doc, so now we only have your part and Q&A. So we can
Yes.
stop sharing the screen and you can share your doc.
Yeah.
I think if you want to like just cover something that might be like not covered by us in general, then probably you can go over that, and then we can like stop the recording and we can talk about that doc.
Yeah.
Like if you feel something that is not covered by us, like maybe that might be important.
Yeah. So, I think most of
Your voice is not like enough, so could you speak louder, Fanil?
Yeah, I might
yeah,
need to quit and restart. Give me 1 minute to rejoin.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Until then, we also have like Fennel Doshi with us from
Yeah.
University of Massachusetts, Amherst. So he also has a lot of research experience. So if any of you guys want to ask some questions to him till then.
Yep. And yeah. And also like Fanil, if you would like to talk about ourselves something like
Yeah, sure.
before like taking the question answers.
yeah. So most of the important things were covered. So I think it's all good. You are able to hear me, right?
It's low. The voice is pretty low, so probably if you could speak a bit louder.
Yeah. So most of the things were covered. So I think we are all on that part. I hope I'm audible now.
Yeah, you're audible. So if anyone has any questions till now, until Swapnil rejoins and shares, you can ask. Like
Yep.
anything, any random thing is fine.
I think if you want to like stop the recording, that's also fine.
We'll wait for Swapnil, right? He's sharing the doc. That's fine.
But like doc coding, like that doc code is not supposed to be shared, right? Like on record. Something like this fine, right? If we record that doc, or like do you want us to like stop the recording?
Oh no, I can walk you through this, and then we can take questions offline.
Okay.
Um, Sorry, I assume you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. It's,
It's just so I sort of wrote this in during the presentation, so that they are like very hastily formed ideas, but they do generally represent what I'm thinking of. So let's walk through this. The first part of the presentation focused on research without actively getting into what is research, because we sort of, that's a whole different ball game. But just to go quickly over what is research. Um, where did this go? Yeah. I wrote a tweet thread about this, but to like for colloquial understanding, research seems like a mixtape. A mixtape is a bunch of songs that you put together with some modification. So Doing research to me is like creating music. First, you're going to learn more about what kind of music you like by listening to existing music, which is equivalent of reading more research papers in different areas to try and figure out what area you're interested in. One day you sit and make a playlist of your favorite songs, which is like this collection of research areas. Like you pick one out of those which you think you are good at or at least interested in. One day you decide to remix one of these songs, so you pick like an existing GitHub project, clone it, maybe add a feature or two, and try and understand how research works. And this, it might just be like a software development thing, not like necessarily a research thing, but there is a blurry line between the two. And as you keep doing that, you realize, well, I have a bunch of playlists. I can actually be a DJ, which is like saying like an early stage or early grad student or late undergrad student who is doing research with some mentorship from other people. Once you get good at DJing, you might think of, okay, I have my own beats. I can do EDM stuff. I can create these new beats overlaid with some lyrics drawn from some custom source or whatever. And you're hacking together a bunch of things to make like a project. And it's basically the same thing in research. Like you pick up stuff from different research papers and put it together to create a research project. And then as you keep doing that and getting more experience, one day you suddenly realize that, oh, well, I can actually create my own song from scratch now. And so you might end up being a musician or becoming a researcher, which is exactly like these steps, at least for me, are exactly how the research process has progressed. There is nothing to say you can't start with creating your own music, but if you know nothing about music, it's going to be incredibly hard to become a musician. So again, the analogies hold, I think, one to one with research, and it just struck me as like a very nice way to explain like what is research. But getting back to like what the presentation and what we're talking about today, we established that it's not impossible to do good research as an undergrad. It's just really hard to do it alone. Great mentorship, and I would even add good peers help reduce the time and effort expended on non-researchy ideas. And what do I mean by non-researchy? That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad ideas. It just means it's harder to get those ideas published. Publication, it does seem like a game to me, where like the process seems more and more arbitrary every day. So people might get rejected for very weird reasons. Like great researchers also get rejected on a daily basis, and I know this for a fact. Um, um, Doing research is not very straightforward. It takes time and effort to spawn new ideas, but you already knew that. This is why like many first-time researchers just pick up old ideas and extend it to one more application, or like add a feature to a software product, if you're more familiar with that terminology. So that is research. That is still like good research. It's just much easier to do those things than sit and come up with entirely new ideas. So yeah, that's we already went into what is research. We spoke a bit about research internships, and there was a statement that like it's just about implementing what professors tell you or what a PhD student might tell you to do. I don't think that's exactly the case. Like I think again, doing good research requires some pre-existing knowledge, either on the mentor's side and the willingness to sit and explain that to the student, or it requires like good knowledge on the student's part, at which point they are able to like understand what the professor is saying. For me, research has been a lot more about conducting experiments to validate a theory, and then if that theory doesn't work, then coming up with a new theory to explain these experiments. And more often than not, it's about debating whether a question is worth answering, or if like a different one should be asked, if a different form has been answered before, and we can use those things. And all of that has to do with background reading. You have to know what you're talking about. That is the best way to like get started in research, and it is very hard to do that. Like reading research papers, I think there were a couple of links shared about those. Please go through those are important. And it will be a struggle to read research papers, I know, because especially for me, I started with very math heavy papers, and it was just painful to sit and not know what is on a particular page. But you get through that. The way you get through that is you talk to people about this paper. You talk to other equally confused people, other more confused people, and together you sit and figure out what the paper means. There was a section on cold emails. I think there are a couple of pieces of um, um, this is my approach to how I figured out who to cold email, what to say in the cold email, and like why some cold emails worked out for me. I started with like Twitter. For me, I created an information stream by following people that I wanted to know more about. Um, Aspirational following is like just, oh, I like this person, I should know what they're doing, let's follow them. Um, I then looked up, like I seeded some people, I figured out their areas of interest, and I was like, okay, this is something I might like. And then I went to YouTube, looked up those areas, looked up those videos, started with 5-minute videos, went up to the point where I found courses on these topics, and I watched some of those course videos. YouTube also led me to figure out some summer schools and some events that I'm hoping to get into at some point. But those, like the MIT has a Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines. They have a summer school every year, typically for advanced PhD students, but that is something I'm actively trying to get into. I've been rejected twice now. Hopefully, in one of the years, I expect to get in next year. Again, like it's a process of understanding what they are looking for. So every year, if they publish like their entire set of lectures, then I look those lectures up. If they publish a set of selected students, I look them up. What did they do? Why did they get in? And I sort of build a mental picture of the person who is selecting me. And that's how I figure out, like, okay, if I was selecting a student, what would I look for? And then figure out what I need to do to get there. And if at all that is the right place for me to be. So I'm trying to explain my process to you. Hopefully you can develop your own processes. The way my cold emailing worked when I was applying for a PhD was I spent 1 or 2 hours reading a professor's papers. A lot of times they were very hard to like decipher. Again, that comes with practice. There is no magic approach to it. I spent a bunch of time looking up their life history, in the sense like where did they do their PhD, who was their advisor, what topics did they start with, what topics did they go to, what topics did they end with, and now what are they doing? And then try to build a picture of why that research direction emerged. Like clearly they saw something in the world that made them like come to a point where they said, okay, this is the research I'm doing now. So understand what a professor is doing, but why they're doing it. And that gives me enough to go on to the next part and get more information, which says like look at their students, past students, what they did, new students, what they're doing. Then I have enough to like figure out the next part, which is like think up a problem that leverages your expertise but is also relevant to what they're doing. So that is where I can say, oh, I'm special because I can solve this problem well, and this problem matters to you because this is xyz work that you have done with the student and whatever, and that is important to you. That's how my cold emails worked. And I also wrote to a lot of PhD students. So they were really helpful. I mean, they have more time on hand than professors. So you're more likely to receive a response if you write to them instead. There are two links. One is my own blog post, which is a guide to asking better questions, which is just I've got a lot of questions from a bunch of people over the years, and a lot of them were okay questions. A few of them were really good questions, and with the good questions, I really felt like compelled to like spend time answering them because I enjoyed it. So if you can figure out how to ask better questions, and I have asked bad questions in the past, so I feel like I know what those are like. I wrote an article about like what good and bad is to me, and what sorts of approach you can use to increase the engagement of your conversations with people you don't know. It's on my blog. I can share a link at some point. This is really important. This link I should share right now. Um, how to write like good emailing etiquette is super critical in not just in industry or academia, in life in general. Like talking to people in brief is a skill. um, and Matt Might is like this legendary, I think he was a professor but now he's at Google, I'm not sure. But yeah, just read the article. I don't think I have more to say. I can't express it better than he does. uh, People who mass emailed, and Aryan mentioned this, like I think they don't explicitly tell you that they are experienced somewhat with mass emailing. Like they are not blindly following templates and writing mass emails. Like they are conditioned to like add these tweaks and like bits and pieces that convince a professor that this mass email is worth responding to. So don't blindly mass email. Like get some experience first writing good emails and then think about mass emailing. Um, I already spoke about structure, which was like the most crucial part of my PhD experience so far. Like structure has been invaluable in doing good research. And I added some life advice like I think rules are meant to be broken. I have broken a number of rules, and the only reason I was able to do what I did in a lot of cases was because I broke rules and didn't worry about consequences until after. This is not to say like break laws, but there are rules that are bendable and to some extent breakable. And it's like the Surf Excel ad, अगर दाग लगने से किसी का कुछ अच्छा होता है तो दाग अच्छे है. Just use it in a wholesome sense, not like in a negative sense. Anyway, the other thing is find your unfair advantage and exploit it. For me, those were communication skills. I still am a very good salesperson. um, I feel like I have an ability to distill complex concepts and boil them down to simple things because I have been such a bad student in the sense like I didn't understand so many things that like now that I understand them, I know the exact feeling before and after and like what to do to connect them. Which is why I got into like this research, teaching, and all of these things where I know I can boil down an idea to the bare minimum and explain it to a student who doesn't know anything and really like get them on board with what I'm talking about. Know your weaknesses. I know that I talk really fast. I know that I tend to write really lengthy emails. I know that I tend to procrastinate a lot. So I overburden myself with work so that even like at some point I can no longer procrastinate. That results in stress. It's not optimal, but it worked for me for a long time, and you need to learn how to use. I'm giving you case start like examples of what I'm doing. You should do like these things if they work out for you. In terms of break some rules, like there was this point on the Iit Bombay application where they asked me for my future GPA, like in the sense like my GPA was not out yet and I filled it in. There were people, so I was selected purely on the basis of my GPA. Like they had an explicit GPA quota and software development quota. I was not in the software development quota because I didn't solve the challenge or whatever. I got in on the GPA quota because I don't think most people from DJ Sangvi applied. There were two people who had a higher GPA than me, but they didn't fill in this blank GPA. And I just wrote, this is my estimated GPA and wrote the GPA there. Um, it was straightforward, but there were no rules set regarding it. And those people didn't apply and didn't get in. Like they had a higher GPA, so I would assume they would have gotten in. And so like there are these random things that happen just by chance. So it's okay to break rules as long as like they are not laws. So hopefully I've given you enough to think about for your own lives. I think we can stop recording and take questions.